Okay, so we usually hear from Christian apologists that John chapter 1 verse 1 proves that Jesus is equal with God. Now, if we read John chapter 1 verse 1, the Greek words used in John chapter 1 verse 1 could mean a God, a not, God. So a God instead of a God. If the word being Jesus is a God, then that means Jesus is not equal to God, or Jesus is not co-equal to God, or the same essence or quality as God. But if John chapter 1 verse 1 is appropriately translated as the word was a God, or Jesus was a God, then a God means a representative of God as found in other places in the New Testament. For example, if you read John chapter 10 verse 34, it says the Jews or the judges were seen as a God. So we all know that the Jewish judges aren't co-equal with God. They just, they're a representative of God. We read in Acts chapter 12 verse 22 that the Roman governor was seen as a God. So does that mean the Roman governor is co-equal with God or in the same quality or essence as God? No. It just means that a person seen as a God is seen as a representative of God and not as co-equal with God. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 4 says the devil or Satan is a God. Now, do any Christians or Jews or Muslims or whatever believe that Satan is, co-equal with God? No. It's just that according to the New Testament terminology or New Testament Greek linguistics, it means Satan as a God does not mean that he's co-equal with God. Rather, Satan is a representative of God, according to 2 Corinthians, etc., according to Greek linguistics. So we read in John chapter 10, verse 34, Acts chapter 12, verse 22, and 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4, that a God means somebody who's a representative of God and not co-equal with God or an agent of God. So John chapter 1, verse 1, the Greek words could be translated as the word was a God. A God means a agent of God or a representative of God, not necessarily not somebody who's co-equal with God or in the same essence or quality as God. So further, if we go to an early Christian scholar and an early Christian theologian, Origen, he's the most knowledgeable of early Christian Greek speaking scholars. He translates John chapter 1 verse 1 as actually meaning the word logos was a God. So even the early Christian church father or the early Christian theologian and scholar Origen, in his commentary on the Gospel of John, Book 1, Chapter 42, Book 2, Chapter 3, translates John chapter 1, verse 1 as the Word, which is Jesus, was a God. So according to the ancient Greek rhetoric or the ancient Greek linguistics, John chapter 1 verse 1 can be translated as Jesus as a God. So Origen's commentary on John is the first great work of Christian interpretation. Origen was certainly the most knowledgeable about New Testament Koine Greek of any scholar. He studied it from early childhood and even taught it professionally from his teens onward. And this was during a time when it was a living language and, of course, well understood. And the reference is right there for you who want to jot it down. So my point is that John chapter 1 verse 1 does not prove that Jesus is God. If anything, it proves that Jesus was a God. And we read in other places like Acts and 2 Corinthians that the devil and the Roman governor were seen as a God. So that means that Greek word, a God, can mean somebody who is an agent of God or a representative of God, and doesn't mean that they're co-equal with God in essence and purpose, etc. So John chapter 1 verse 1 can be translated, the Greek can be translated as the early Christian scholar Origen translated it as Jesus being a God, which is a representative or an agent of God and not necessarily co-equal or in the same quality or essence as God. So John chapter 1 verse 1 does not prove Jesus is God or co-equal with God. It proves that Jesus is a representative or an agent of God and not necessarily co-equal or co-equal with God, or Jesus is not seen as, equal with God. He's lesser than God. He's a agent or representative of God if the Greek is translated as the word was a God instead of the word was God. So John chapter 1 verse 1, John chapter 1 verse 1 does not prove Jesus is God. It proves that Jesus is lesser than God or an agent or a representative of God. and not co-equal with God. So John chapter 1 verse 1 can be translated, the Greek can be translated to mean to put Jesus in a lesser position, or to put Jesus as lesser than God and not co-equal with God. So John chapter 1 verse 1 does not prove that Jesus is God. According, if we were to translate the Greek, to mean that the word was a God instead of what the word was God. Stay tuned. More videos refuting the Trinity and the so-called divinity of Jesus using the New Testament up ahead.